call, please.
Yes, roll call. Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Mr. Wabi.
Yes.
Mr. Nikozison. Mr. Nikozison, are you on mute?
Yes.
I am present.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve the journal of the preceding meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Thank you. I've got no comments. We'll move to the report of the board committees. Trustee Watson, can you read the audit committee report, please?
Sure. Audit Committee, November 2nd, 2021. Board of Trustees report. The Audit Committee started approximately 7:45 a.m. on Tuesday, November the 2nd, 2021. In attendance were Trustees Watson, Evans, Fair, Wabi, and Wilson. The chairman had no introductory comment. The committee approved the minutes from the October 5th meeting. Next, the district's internal auditor, Clifton Lawson Allen, presented an overview of the results of the audit of the district's financial statements for the year of June 2021. An unmodified or clean opinion was financial statements. No material uncorrected or corrected. Misstatements were identified. No fraud or illegal were identified. In working with the management and performing their engagement, no difficulties are encountered by the auditors. 3 new GSB were adopted during the fiscal year. No significant weakness were identified during the audit process. A management letter was not issued. There were items identified that the threshold for communication. Internal audit continued to meet by reporting on the status of previously issued audit recommendations, stating that 252 since April of 236 or 94% recommendation. Internal audit provided a status update for the 16 recommendations that remain open as of November 2021. During the presentations, questions were discussed as they were received from the committee. The meeting adjourned at approximately 8:15. The next meeting is typically scheduled for Tuesday, November the 30th, 2021. This concludes the audit committee report.
Thank you. Trustee Fair, can you read the finance committee report, please?
Certainly. The Finance Committee met on November 2nd, 2021 with Trustees Fair, Wilson, Evans, Watson, and Wabi in attendance. The minutes from the October 5th, 2021 meeting were approved. The first item on the agenda was a report by staff on the district's operating fund portfolio as of October 29th, 2021. Staff stated that the portfolio complies with the district's investment policy. Next were ordinances authorizing staff to enter into a contract with Public Financial Management, PFM, and Independent Public Advisors, IPA, for 3 years with 2 additional 1-year renewals. Both firms will be used on an as-needed basis to assist with bond issues, development of financing plans, assistance with rate commission work, and general professional financial advisory services. These will be ordinances number 15822 and 15823 on tonight's agenda. The next item on the agenda was a resolution which authorizes changes to the district's debt policy. Updates include the addition of language regarding the use of a swap advisor, clarification regarding when to issue tax-exempt and taxable debt, revised savings thresholds to consider before issuing refunding bonds, and documentations of the trustees' ability to approve parameter ordinances for the issuance of bonds. This will be resolution number 3714 on tonight's agenda. The next item discussed on the agenda pertained to a staff request to exercise the third of 4 optional 1-year contract extensions with Milliman to provide actuarial services. This will be resolution number 3713 on tonight's agenda. The last item discussed on the agenda pertained to a staff request to enter into a contract with Clifton Larson Allen for independent audit of all the accounts and funds of the district and sub-district for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. The contract will be for 1 year with 4 additional option years. This will be ordinance number 15824 on tonight's agenda. The meeting adjourned at approximately 8:40 a.m. The next tentatively scheduled meeting is Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. This concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson, can you read the Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting minutes?
Yes, again. The Stakeholder Relations Committee met at District Headquarters on Tuesday, November the 2nd, 2021, at approximately 8:40 a.m. Those present at the meeting included Chairperson Wilson, Trustees Evans, Fair, Wabi, Watson, as well as District Directors and staff. Chairperson Wilson called roll, had no further comments. By motion of all trustees, the minutes of the October 5th Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting were approved. The first agenda item was a discussion by Susan Myers regarding a resolution to exercise the first option to renew a contract for the collection of excess proceeds from property sold at tax sale auctions. This is resolution number 3712 on tonight's agenda. The next agenda item was a discussion by Susan Meyer regarding MSD's federal and state legislative priorities for 2022. Susan provided a summation of the priorities, noting that one state priority was removed from the previous year as it was completed, and one federal priority was added to include the monitoring of legislation regarding emerging contaminants, environmental justice, and climate change. All other priorities remain the same as the previous years. There's no board action required at this time. The meeting was adjourned at approximately 8:50 a.m. by Chairperson Wilson. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, November 30th. This concludes the Stakeholder Relations Committee Board Comments Report.
Thank you. Trustee Nikozissin, can you read the Program Management Committee report?
Yes, I can. Welcome to the Program Management Committee report. The Program Management Committee met on November 2nd, 2021 at 8:51 a.m. The meeting was attended by Trustees Evans, Wilson, Fair, and Watson, and Wabi. Minutes of the October 5th, 2021 meeting were approved. The agenda items to be introduced tonight were presented and discussed, including a detailed discussion regarding the following items. Ordinance numbers 15802 and 15803. Staff discussed green infrastructure grants being authorized to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River in compliance with the MSD consent decree. Staff provided details of the grants and interfaith residents for the construction of various reducing green infrastructure as part of improvements to their properties at two separate locations. Ordinance number 15808, staff gave an update on the status of the assessment acquisition on one parcel of ground for the Fenton Creek Pump Station project. Staff continues to negotiate with the property owner but has been unable to reach an agreement. Staff is requesting authorization from the board to move forward with condemnation efforts to allow the project to remain on schedule. Ordinance numbers 15810 through 15812. Staff presented the planned supplemental appropriation for $3 million for three multi-year construction management service contract with Shannon and Wilson Incorporated, Black and Veek Corporation, and KAI 360 Construction Services LLC. The appropriation for Shannon and Wilson is $100,000 above the proposed budget due to special inspection requirements added to the project scope. The appropriation for Black and Veek Corporation is $2.8 million below the proposed budget due to the lower Merrimack River Baumgartner Tunnel not starting as early as originally anticipated. Staff presented details of several general services agreement contracts for engineering support services. Ordinance numbers 15814 through 15816 will provide funding for three geotechnical service contracts, and ordinance numbers 15817 through 15821 will provide funding for the 5 survey services contracts. All these contracts support internal design staff with the ultimate design and delivery of consent decree and assessment management projects. Under other businesses, Staff gave a presentation on the October 14th, 2021 letter to the Board of Trustees from Hankin Environmental Systems Incorporated. Staff provided a history of the proposed project and the pre-qualification process referenced in the letter. Staff then answered several questions from the committee. At 9:47 a.m., Trustee Evans moved to go into closed session to discuss legal, confidential, or privileged matters under paragraph 610.021 RSMO 1988 supplement. Trustees Evans, Fair, Wabi, Wilson, and Watson approved. The committee voted to come out of closed sessions at approximately 10:46 a.m. The next committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for November 30th, 2021. The meeting was adjourned at 10:27 a.m.
Thank you. Do we have a report from the executive director?
No, sir.
I understand we do have a comment from the public.
Yes, we actually have two comments from the public tonight. The first one is from John Goffstein of Goffstein Law. This is regarding appeal from notice of disqualification of Hankin Environmental Services, Inc. as incinerator system RFQ 12565-015.8. And I'll just read the letter. Dear members of the Board of MSD, along with David R. Bohm of Dana McCatrick PC, we represent Hankin Environmental Services, which submitted a statement of qualification seeking to be qualified as an incinerator system supplier on the Solids Management Upgrades Project for Bissell Point and Lemay. Hankin has extensive experience in the fabrication, installation, and commissioning of fluidized bed incinerators. Thus, we were shocked that it was wrongfully and clearly erroneously determined that Hankin was not qualified by MSD staff in the first instance, which decision was ultimately sustained by MSD's executive director, notwithstanding that extensive factual proof was submitted by Hankin that it has extensive experience in the fabrication, installation, and commissioning of fluidized bed incinerators. To compound this terrible conclusion, MSD staff found only a single entity qualified to be a sole source incinerator system supplier for the SMU project. This is not an example of good government, nor is it cost effective. Given Hankin's extensive experience over the last 40 years, including but not limited to several projects in which it fabricated and installed large fluidized bed incinerators, it is more than qualified to provide the fluidized bed incinerators for the SMU project. For example, we also want to bring to your immediate attention that Hankin has worked at the Bissell Point plant as an ISS for the existing MHF and in the early 90s. Hankin successfully renovated the old multiple hearth furnaces, MHF, and provided a new MHF to MSD as a subcontractor to a local contractor, Alberici. At this time, this $15 million Hankin project was one of the largest MFH contracts for sludge cake incineration in the USA. The Alberici letter exhibit attached here too. There was an exhibit letter attached, which I won't read, but which will be put into the record with the journal. This letter. The letter, it looks like a reference letter from December of 1990. The FBI technology has slowly been replacing the MHF in the incineration of sludge cake, and Hankin has been a leader in the design and supplier of FBIs to replace MHF for sludge cake incineration. MSD has determined, as stated on the Project Clear website, that the treatment process components included in the FBI project have been refined, and MSD has concluded that some ancillary equipment will likely not be a part of the project, including a wet electrostatic precipitator system and a selective non-catalytic reactive system. In other words, MSD is removing air pollution control equipment, while Hankin is proposing to furnish equipment as specified presently by the agency. Thus, experience with such equipment cannot be appropriately considered in determining ISS qualifications. However, even if consideration of such experience is appropriate, Hankin's SOQ and subsequent submission demonstrate it does have experience with this type of equipment on several of the fluidized bed incinerators that it has fabricated and installed, as well as experience with other types of APC equipment that are specified in the RFQ-RFP. Further, Hankin's installations have all met then existing EPA requirements, including its installation and retrofit of the multiple hearth furnaces at Bissell Point and Lemay. More recently, in 2017, Hankin met EPA's then new air pollution control standards for existing source sludge incinerators and a retrofit of fluidized bed incinerators for the Somerset-Raritan Valley Sewerage Authority. All of Hankin's sewage sludge incinerator installations have met the then existing EPA air pollution requirement. It is clear from documentation submitted by Hankin that it is qualified to supply fluidized bed incinerators for the Bissell Point and Lemay wastewater treatment plant. No viable reason exists to believe a Hankin fluid bed incinerator will not meet current EPA standards. Any position to the contrary is utterly without merit and a defaming red herring at best. Hankin is unwilling to accept the decision of MSD finding Hankin unqualified. This position, unless changed, damages our client and prevents it from providing bids to potential design-build contractors to provide fluidized bed incinerators. Since Hankin has been shut out of the MSD bidding process, this has given the appearance of the bidding process being rigged so that there is only a single source qualified to supply fluidized bed incinerators for Bissell Point and Lemay. This essentially creates a monopoly and will cost tax and ratepayers many millions of dollars because it necessarily follows that the cost of the fluidized bed incinerators will be substantially higher than if there was legitimate competition. This is to serve as formal notice that Hankin has or will be filing suit without further notice in the St. Louis City Circuit Court challenging MSD's decision that it is not qualified. MSD's decision that Hankin is not qualified irreparably harming Hankin and is contrary to the public interest. MSD's decision is arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, against the weight of the evidence, in violation of relevant statutes, and contrary to the public interest. As part of its suit, Hankin will be seeking injunctive and other equitable relief, including asking the court to stay the RFQ and RFP processes for selection of the design-build contractor. Hankin respectfully, Hankin respectfully requests that the full board consider this issue and discuss the matter further with us for the sole and exclusive purpose of avoiding litigation, because settlement here particularly will be good public policy and that Hankin is clearly qualified, and settlement will promote the public's interest in competition, which will substantially reduce the cost of fluidized bed incinerators for Lemay and Bissell Point. Very truly yours, John H. Gosti. That is the first public comment. The next one comes from Tom Sullivan, dated November 10th, 2021. And it starts, in order to give the board a better perspective on stormwater and erosion problems and how long they have been neglected in this area, my comments are from a 1994 letter of mine in the Post-Dispatch. It reads, it was quite a news flash the Director of Engineering for the Metropolitan Sewer District, Robert G. Butchko, delivered to the Stormwater Committee of the St. Louis County Council. 95% of our customers do not have problems, he told the committee, as reported in the May 16th Post-Dispatch. However, it would seem Butchko was engaged in some wishful thinking. In 1989, MSD hired community consultants to conduct a survey. People were specifically asked whether stormwater was a problem in their neighborhood. The response, 51%, said it was either a big problem or somewhat of a problem. If another survey were taken today, it would show problems getting worse. MSD is doing virtually nothing to solve stormwater problems in the area and mostly ignores them in the annexed area of the district, which is roughly outside Interstate 270 in the county. So people in that area voted to become part of the sewer district in 1977. Butchko told the committee, we don't even know what's out there. So what's the district been doing for the last 15 years? What is really outrageous is MSD spending $2 million for yet another study of stormwater problems, despite having already wasted millions of dollars over the years for countless other stormwater studies. Butchko is paid nearly $80,000 a year as a director of engineering and has more than 100 people working in his department. If he needs a $2 million study to tell him where stormwater problems are, something is very wrong. That is the end of the letter. Thank you for listening to my comments. And those are the public comments.
All right, any submission of public hearing reports?
There are none.
Any other communications?
There are none.
All right, on to the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. The consent agenda tonight is items 10 through 36. Staff would like to pull item 18 for a separate vote, for an amendment and a separate vote, which I'll explain in a moment. Is there any board member who would like to pull any other item for a separate vote? All right, hearing none for items 10 through 17 and 19 through 36, is there a motion for adoption?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson?
He's muted.
Or are you muted? You might be muted.
I'm sorry, yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right. Item 18, which is the adoption of proposed ordinance number 15779. We would like a motion to amend. It currently reads that it is the ordinance will make an appropriation of $235,000 from the district-wide stormwater fund and $465,000 from the Operation Maintenance Construction Improvement, or OMCI, fund of Watkins Creek for channel stabilization, and authorizing a contract with Fred M. Luth & Sons. Because of an adjustment to fund balances, we would like to adjust the dollar amount so that the appropriation from the district-wide stormwater fund is $236,000 instead of $235,000. And the appropriation from the OMCI fund of Watkins Creek is $464,000 instead of $465,000. So a $1,000 switch from one to the other. So then the new motion would be an adoption of proposed ordinance number 15779, making an appropriation of $236,000 from the district-wide stormwater fund and $464,000 from the OMCI fund of Watkins Creek to be used for channel stabilization in the WC 33 Lapadera El Camara Storm Improvement Project in unincorporated St. Louis County, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Fred M. Luth and Sons. Can I get a motion for amendment?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right, and then on the amended motion, is there a motion for adoption?
So move. Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right, thank you for that. We will now move to new business, start with ordinances. And item 37, which is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15798, making an appropriation of $330,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for sanitary sewer construction in the Clayton Road 9925 sanitary sewer replacement project in the city of Ladue, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Gershenson Construction. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
So moved.
Mr. Watson?
Second. Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 38 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15799, making an appropriation of $2.8 million from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for combined sewer construction in Dolan Place and Grandview Place combined sewer relief project in the city of St. Louis, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Gershenson. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 39 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15800, making an appropriation of $1.28 million from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for wastewater treatment plant construction in the Missouri River Wastewater Treatment Facility digester gas storage cover replacement project in the city of Maryland Heights, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Evaco Water Technology. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Excuse me. Item 40, introduction of proposed ordinance number 15801, making an appropriation of $250,000 from the district-wide stormwater fund to be used for storm sewer construction in Broadhead 921 storm sewer project in unincorporated St. Louis County, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Waymeyer Farm. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I skipped Mr. Nikozison.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 41 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15802, authorizing the district to enter into an agreement with Interfaith Residents doing business as Doorways for cost sharing for green infrastructure construction in the CSO volume reduction green infrastructure Doorways 2.0 admin retail project in the city of St. Louis. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 42 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15803, authorizing the district to enter into an agreement with Interfaith Residents doing business as Doorways for cost sharing for green infrastructure construction in the CSO volume reduction green infrastructure Doorways 2.0 MHDC housing project in the city of St. Louis. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 43, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15804, making an appropriation of $3.5 million from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for property rights acquisition and the easement acquisition for wastewater projects in the district service area, and authorizing the district to acquire necessary property rights in order to construct combined and sanitary sewer projects. Is there a motion for introduction?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 44, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15805, making an appropriation of $350,000 from the OMCI Fund of Deer Creek to be used for property rights acquisition and the easement acquisition for Deer Creek OMCI projects in the district service area and authorizing the district to acquire necessary property rights in order to construct stormwater sewer projects. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 45, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15806, making an appropriation of $80,000 from the OMCI Fund of Mailing Creek to be used for property rights acquisition and the easement acquisition for Mailing Creek OMCI projects in the district service area and authorizing the district to acquire necessary property rights in order to construct stormwater sewer projects. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 46, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15807, making an appropriation of $95,000 from the OMCI Fund of University City to be used for property rights acquisition and the easement acquisition for University City OMCI projects in the district service area and authorizing the district to acquire necessary property rights in order to construct stormwater sewer projects. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 47, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15808, declaring the necessity for the acquisition of easements and temporary easements and certain real property within the district for the purpose of construction of sewers and related appurtenances in the project known as Fenton Creek Pump Station Improvements in unincorporated St. Louis County to serve needs of residents of the area and authorizing staff to proceed with further condemnation efforts related to the project. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 48, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15809, making a supplemental appropriation of $2.5 million from the general fund to be used for CCTV inspection and physical inspection of sewers, sonar inspections, laser profiling, and sewer cleaning in the CCTV inspection and physical inspection of sewers project in the district service area and authorizing the district to amend a contract with Ace Pipe Clean. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 49, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15810, making a supplemental appropriation of $2.8 million from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for construction management services in the construction management services Lower and Middle River Repair Tunnel Facilities project in various locations within the district and authorizing the district to amend a contract with Shannon and Wilson. Is there a motion for introduction?
Aye. So moved.
Second.
That worked. That worked. Mr. Watson,
Yes.
Mr. Wabi,
So move aye.
and Mr. Nicholasison,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Fair,
Yes.
Mr. Evans.
Yes.
Item 50, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15811, making a supplemental appropriation of $2 million from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for construction management services in the construction management services Lower Merrimack and Deer Creek Tunnels project in various locations within the district and authorizing the district to amend the contract with Black and Veatch. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
That is a motion and a second. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 51, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15812, making a supplemental appropriation of $7 million from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for construction management services in the construction management services tank treatment pump station facilities project in various locations within the district and authorizing the district to amend a contract with KAI 360 Construction Services. Can I get a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 52 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15813, making an appropriation of $475,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for general engineering services in the general services agreement facility and sewer design contract A project at various locations within the district and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Donahue and Associates. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Right, items 53 to 55 are all proposed ordinances for geotechnical services. If there's no objection, I'd like to read each of them individually, then we'll take one vote on the group. Hearing no objection, item 53 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15814, making an appropriation of $85,000 from the district-wide stormwater fund, again for general geotechnical services, and the general services agreement geotechnical contract A project at various locations in the district, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Rights and Gens. Item 54 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15815, making an appropriation of $85,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used in the general services agreement geotechnical contract B project at various locations within the district, and authorize the district to enter into a contract with Geotechnology Incorporated. And item 55 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15816, making an appropriation of $85,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used for general services agreement geotechnical contract C project at various locations within the district, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Geosyntech Consult. For items 53 through 55, is there a motion for introduction?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Mr. Wabi.
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson. Ms. Fair.
Yes.
Mr. Evans.
Yes.
All right. Similarly, items 56 through 60 are all for general survey services. So if there's no objection, I'd like to read them individually and then vote as a group. Hearing no objection, item 56 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15817, making an appropriation of $50,000 from the district-wide stormwater fund to be used again for general surveying services in the general services agreement survey services contract A project at various locations within the district, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Civil Design. Item 57 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15818, making an appropriation of $50,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used in the general services agreement survey services contract B project at various locations within the district, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Abna Engineering. Item 58 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15819, making an appropriation of $50,000 from the district-wide stormwater fund to be used for in the general services agreement survey services contract C project at various locations within the district, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Sabre, Inc. And item 59 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15820, making a supplemental appropriation of $50,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used in the general services agreement survey services contract D project at various locations within the district, and authorizing the district to amend a contract with the Sterling Company. And item 60 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15821, making an appropriation of $50,000 from the sanitary replacement fund to be used in the general services agreement survey services contract E project at various locations within the district, and authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Heidemann and Associates. For items 56 through 60, is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Mr. Wabi.
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson. Ms. Fair.
Yes.
Mr. Evans.
Yes.
Item 61, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15822, authorizing the district to enter into a contract with the municipal advisory firm Independent Public Advisors, whereby IPA will provide general and transactional professional advisory services to the district. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 62 is the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15823, authorizing the district to enter into a contract with the municipal advisory firm of PFM Financial Advisors, whereby PFM will provide general and transactional professional and financial advisory services to the district. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 63, the introduction of proposed ordinance number 15824, authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Clifton Larson Allen for an independent audit of the accounting records of the district. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
And item 64, the introduction and adoption of proposed ordinance number 15825, repealing ordinance 14876 that was adopted February 15, 2018, and enacting a new ordinance in lieu thereof, prescribing the salary of the executive director of the district and authorizing the chairman of the board to enter into a one-year contract extension through July 1st, 2024 with Brian L. Holscher to be employed as executive director of the district with an emergency clause. Is there a motion for introduction?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Do I hear an objection to the suspension of the rule? Hearing none, is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nikozissin?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right, that takes us to resolutions. First one is item 65, the adoption of resolution 3709, where the Executive Director of the district has recommended to the Board of Trustees that a section of district real property located at or near 6942 to 44 Odell Street in St. Louis, Missouri, 63143, is no longer necessary or useful in district operations and therefore should be declared as surplus property. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 66, the adoption of Resolution 3710, whereby the Executive Director of the district has recommended to the Board of Trustees that a section of district real property located at or near 613 Cleveland Avenue in Kirkwood, Missouri, 63122, is no longer necessary or useful in the district operations and therefore should be declared as surplus property. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 67, the adoption of Resolution 3711, expressing the Board of Trustees' appreciation to Eric C. Meadows for his 34 years of exemplary service to the district from July 20th, 1987 to his retirement effective November 1st, 2021. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 68, the adoption of Resolution 3712 to exercise option year 1 of a contract previously authorized by Ordinance 15550, adopted November 12, 2020, that authorized the district to enter into a contract with Beck Dickhouse and Associates, formerly known as Beck Ostrom Suite, LLC, provide legal services for the collection of excess proceeds from properties sold at the St. Louis City and St. Louis County tax sale auction. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Item 69, the adoption of Resolution 3713 to exercise option year 3 of a contract previously authorized by Ordinance 15032, adopted October 11, 2018, that authorized the district to enter into a contract with Milliman to provide actuarial services for the district's pension plan, defined contribution plan, deferred compensation plan, accrued sick leave program, vacation accrual, GASB 67 and GASB 68, pension accounting reporting, GASB 75 OPEB reporting, and consultant services. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
And finally, item 70, the adoption of Resolution 3714 to authorize changes to the district's debt policy. These changes fully comply with the criteria in the district's master bond ordinances as described in Ordinance Number 11713, the district's charter, and applicable Missouri statutes. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Wabi?
Aye.
Mr. Nicholasison?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
All right, and there is no further business, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.